You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, everyone. I want to welcome you to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. And, you know, the more I do this, the more I love it. I get to have these great conversations with interesting people who I think are thought leaders and change agents and business leaders and educators. And I get to sit with them and pick their brains and ask them all kinds of cool questions. And so today I have two special guests who are local entrepreneurs. They are the co-owners of Stack Eatery. So I have Sinead and I have Alex in the studio today. And we met couple of years ago when they participated in our Justified Anger U.S. history course. And so we've just been able to, to keep in touch and connect and do some things together. We'll get into that a little bit more in the show. But first of all, let me just say, Sinead and Alex, welcome to Black Like Me. I'm really glad that you're here today.
We're really excited too. Thanks for having us.
Sure. So now, before each episode, we do some things to break the ice, to really help people relax. Because sometimes it can be nerve-wracking kind of coming in. I do have one black icebreaker. Do any of your relatives have plastic on their furniture?
Ooh, no.
My great aunts did.
Your great aunts
did?
did?
Yeah, they lived in Chicago. Yeah.
See, okay, maybe it's a Chicago thing,
Yeah.
really. Did you ever sit on it in the summertime when you stick to it?
Oh, my God. I hate that.
So do you use cocoa butter, too? Do you know what cocoa butter is for?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We've been having these great discussions around here about some cocoa butter stuff.
That's amazing.
Grits or cream of wheat?
Short Stack turned me over to grits. Growing up, it was cream of wheat.
Really?
Same. And cream of wheat, I eat sweet. Is this a white person thing? Cream of wheat is sweet and grits are salty? Is that?
Actually, that's kind of black.
Oh.
So
How do you eat your grits?
I eat them sweet with butter and sugar, but my wife eats them with salt. And so Lexi does salt and sugar.
Well, yeah.
So she put a little bit of both of them on it.
I can dig that too. Yeah, that's
Sweet
good.
and salty.
No, I love that. Thank you all for being good sports and let us ask some of those crazy questions. What's funny about it is that growing up, if black people did anything crazy in the news, I was always asked, like, did you hear about this guy in Kentucky? Did you hear about this guy in Florida? What are black people thinking? So it's so funny because I get to turn the table.
Yeah.
But I better be careful because I'm very outnumbered in this room.
Yes.
I'm the minority on my own show. What is this world coming to?
Yeah.
This is America.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
listen. Don't anybody call the police. All right. We'll be out of here in about 35
Noted,
minutes.
Yeah.
Listen, you two, I respect you as business leaders, as socially conscious business leaders in this community. I mean, I'm in my mid 50s. I've lived in Madison most of my life, and people who are in business are in business because they want to grow it. Perhaps they want to employ people and help them out. But the way in which you think about the community and how your business is just a way of serving the community is really, really tremendous. And so Stack Eatery is this great restaurant that's downtown. It's near campus. It's near the downtown area. But you know what? I have the owners here. Maybe you can. I know I love the food. I see you all the time. You're responsible for like 8 pounds I'm trying to get rid of for vacation. But when people ask you to describe your restaurant, how do you describe Stack Eatery for the people who are listening to this around the country and the world who may not know what I'm referring to?
The first thing I tell people is we only serve breakfast. That's a big one. A lot of times diners serve an 8-page fold menu with spaghetti and burgers and French fries and anything under the sun.
Right.
We were very specific that we wanted to serve only breakfast food all the time, and that it was going to be a super small focused menu. So it wasn't a million things, and so we could keep the quality better with local fresh ingredients. I also tell people it's in the heart of downtown Madison on the Isthmus. That's not by accident. We definitely wanted to put ourselves in a spot.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to put ourselves in a spot where we didn't pigeonhole ourselves as just a student place or just a downtown Capitol Square. We really wanted to be in the heart of the city, really visible, easily accessible to everybody. And so, yeah, heart of downtown Madison, all breakfast eatery. Make some kind of crazy hours. Yeah, and good people watching.
Yeah, definitely great for people watching.
Yeah.
So you've been in operation for how many years?
4 years.
I'm going to get into how we met around the history class, but can you just briefly tell me a little bit about where the idea, the motivation for starting Stack Eatery came from? I think I read about it. Someone was on vacation and said, "Why don't we have this in Madison?" Were you out of the country somewhere, Central America?
Yeah, we were in Guatemala. Yeah, and we decided, yeah, why don't we have this? We were end of our college careers. We had been to a bunch of other college towns. We love road trips. So we had been to a bunch of other college towns, and we were like, oh, they have all these late night diners. Madison's got a college town vibe. And we're like, molded on it more. And we're like, what? Madison's a foodie, scene too.
Sure.
So we kind of wanted to get away from the Greasy Spoon Diner, but keep the late night concept and bring it to Madison. And Madison gave us the love to keep it going.
So what was the time gap between having that idea conversation in Guatemala and actually launching?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
And had you had or thoughts of becoming an entrepreneur or restaurateur prior to that?
No, never. People always ask us that. Yeah, they're like, "Is this your lifelong dream?"
Did you know that you would have this desire to use this for supporting social causes? Because as I'm hearing people talk about you, it's the people who talk about the food, because the food is great, but they're also talking about your heart for giving back to the community. So I'm curious, was that always a part of the plan?
Yeah, we actually we had to go back and forth to get funding a couple different times, and a common thing was, hey, really show us, what if your sales weren't this much? Like, can you succeed with less sales? And would have been really easy to cut out. We really wanted to give 1% back to the community. And we're like, no, we're not cutting that out of our budget, even when we have to slim other things down. So, yeah, we didn't get to do it right away. Not when we first opened.
Sure, because you're trying to stay open.
Yeah, but 2.5 years in is when we were like, all right, I think we're ready to. We still had loans and stuff to pay, but we really wanted to make that an effort. So it was on our mindset from the beginning. We wanted to do things a little different, all of it. So our hours.
Well, I mean, there are huge conglomerations in this community. Huge banks, and your philanthropic contributions and involvement in the community causes theirs to pale in comparison, and they're dealing in the millions and millions and millions of dollars. And so for a person who's also community conscious, that really means a lot to me. Did you have to wait 4 years in part for location? Did you know that you wanted to be in that location, and did you have to wait for the right spot to open?
Yes, we waited for almost like 18 months for that location specifically. For it to become available, to negotiate leases, to get in there. Yeah. We waited a long time. We knew we had a very, like I said, a very specific area we wanted to be in, and so I think the waiting paid off in terms of that corner is a good corner for us.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now you all are young and clearly women. Do we have very many young women who are entrepreneurs, who are restaurateurs or restaurant owners in Madison?
I think we're yet to meet one.
Yeah, because that's like
trailblazing.
All
women owned, yeah.
Right. That's trailblazing as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's got to be part of the story that's told.
Yeah.
Well, that's really great. So how did you find out about the history class? Had you come to any of the Justified Anger? Justified Anger is this movement in the Madison area that I started to really help deal with the racial disparity in our community between blacks and whites. So I've had a couple of forums, but did you come to any of those, or did you find out about the class on Facebook or online or something? It just showed up for it?
I think so. I think that was the first connection. Was just online research. We knew we wanted to continue to educate ourselves, and we had heard from other people, as you probably know, that it's amazing. And so I think that word of mouth around what you started is a strong thing. And so we hopped on board, and we'll be on board until you stop doing it.
Wow. Wow. So as you're sitting in the class, was it the two of you, or Alex, did you go through it first of all? I mean,
it was the two of us and one of our assistant general manager that took the first time we went through together. And then we got 10 more people for the next cohort.
That's amazing. From a small business, 10 more people. Now, one of my visions for our community, and I hope that this becomes really an example of how we approach eradicating racial disparity around the country. But if we educate people to understand how we got to where we are, I think we could then think together about how we move away from it. And there's a fear that if you talk too much about history, it'll cause you to go different ways rather than moving in closer. So when you sat there in the class learning about Black history, did it overwhelm you and make you feel that you were moving away from that? There's no way I can address this. Or did it really help you to think, I want to be a part of the solution? I think I can do something. What was your reaction as you heard information about history that you might not have known in the same detail?
I think it definitely gave me courage that we could go towards a solution. Okay. I think for me, it gave me solid pieces of information to help sell what I already knew was right
Sure.
to people who weren't on board. Like, it gave me nuggets of very useful information.
And I think we're a bit hesitant to do this, Sinead, because again, the thought is, okay, if you start talking about this stuff, we're going to get divided. That's what people say typically when you bring up issues of race, even though we have great disparity, tremendous disparity here in Madison. So we need to talk about it. On the other hand, very few people really want to talk about it. Let's just get a couple programs going. Let's just do a couple of things to get some after school programs going, and then we'll get all better. We'll start talking about the lakes or something else. But this isn't. It's not going away. And so we've been asking people who come to the class, and we've had 650 go through this. You all have probably brought more people than any other group in the history of the class. But these are folks who are now talking about history and feeling like they have a better understanding so that they can become a part of the solution. And this is really the first step in becoming an ally, because people think if they're just woke or they've seen Color Purple or went to see Get Out, that now we're ready. I watch Dear White People. I catch Atlanta. I get this stuff. But it's really understanding the issue so that we can begin leaning more and more into each other. And so I'm curious, as you're sitting in the class, as you're going through this process, do you feel a sense of invitation into learning and an invitation to partnering with, say, African-American folks in wrestling with this issue?
Definitely.
Yeah, I also think there's a lot of it that has nothing to do with me and the African-American community. I think that this is a white people problem that white people need to own up to. And I think
Tell me more about that. Talk more about that.
I mean, yeah.
Preach, my sister.
It's amazing that it's opened the doors to me developing friendships with people like you and your sister and amazing humans that I get to have in my life now. That's awesome. But people need to recognize that this is a white people problem. And this is our responsibility to sign up for a class, get ourselves educated, and then we got a lot of work to do.
Sure.
A ton. And so I think, yes, the class definitely provided that, and this connection definitely provides that. But like Sinead and I have talked about this a lot. Like our role in this now is like we need to build an army of would-be allies. That's our role here.
Yeah, because that's the term we use, would-be allies.
So and that's how I think of it.
That happy face sticker too soon. We're like, come on, stick around, would-be allies. But you feel like you two have to build up this army, a team of this. You know, Alex, I love what you just said. There's been some pushback with the class, and generally overall, it's a real good response. But there are still some participants, and this is designed for non-black people, predominantly white people. And we say that in the literature. This is a course for white people. People still come up to me afterwards and say, I really thought I was going to have more black people here. This is a good starter, but like, where do I practice it? So they think I've got to create the curriculum, find the space, hire the professors, warm the building, transport you up the hill from the corner parking lot, and then I got to bring black friends. Then I got to find them black friends. And bring them to them and sit with them. Okay, all right. White person, black friend, white person. And so it's not even on their radar that they've got to go out and do some work with what they have. So I love what you said, that white people have a lot to do. And that's not just black people thrown off at white people. It's really, really true. Because there are things that white people can say to each other that might sound offensive or insensitive. And we're busy talking to black people by saying, there are some white people building an army who want to work with us. So we got to be ready to work with those folks. So I'm doing work with black people. But if white folks aren't doing what you're saying is important, we don't meet up well. And obviously that's being met with great that people are welcoming that challenge inside Short Stack Eatery. Do you think once you get outside of work or business, white people are more or less responsive to the thought that we have work to do? What's been your response to people and that concept? Do white people believe most white people believe that they need to do work, or is it something black people need to clean up?
Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of white people that still think this isn't their problem. I think they think it's their problem. By they're referring to black people.
Sure.
Yep, and I think it's and we've talked about this before. Of you use the term racist and racism, and it's we're so terrified of it. When why can't we all just own up and I think you said this maybe the first cohort of the class of like you used an example of a friend that used the term racist in recovery.
Right.
And now I live by that too. And I think I introduced myself the first time I was a facilitator for the class and said, "Hi, my name's Alex. I'm a racist in recovery," and everyone. And, you know, we have to unlearn everything we've ever been
Definitely.
taught. And so I'm in recovery for the rest of my life. That's how that's going to go.
That's powerful. And you're right. I was quoting my friend Pete, who became
I love that.
my mentor. I eulogized him as a great leader, author, great faith leader. But that was his introduction.
I live by
and
that,
all
yeah.
the black people in the room, the first question was, "Did you hear what that white man just said?" And the second was this collective sigh of relief, because everyone else seems to play around it, because there's a thought that if you have those tendencies or experiences, that's the worst thing ever. As for many black people, we're assuming it, because how can you swim in these waters and not have that? But the sooner someone says, "Okay, this is what shaped my reality, let me begin to do something different," that is so refreshing. So I think one of the messages that we're giving together here is that if we have those views and experiences or learn certain things from media or family, that's not the end of the world. That could be really the beginning of a solution if we just own up to it.
Yeah. And and we can have some leadership in that. Like I presented that to the Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce board, and I said, "Hey, if we have other business leaders in Madison who are dealing with these issues and want to talk about it, of how you can kind of bring this to your organization, put it out on the table, and how we move forward." And like Summit Credit Union contacted me, and people are like, "Hey, how do we do this?" I'm like, "Well, I clearly don't have all the answers, but I can tell you how I'm stumbling through it." And so just putting it out there as a white person of saying, "Hey, we got a lot of work to do. I'll start with myself, and then we can kind of move forward." And people seem to grab onto that. People need some resources and some help, I think. That's why your class is so awesome.
No, I appreciate that. Sinead, you might remember this. I think I said this with each cohort, but I talked about that there was a time where I was trying to escape from Madison because I saw the racial disparities coming. So the race to equity report was not surprising to me. People's response, first of all, the lack of response surprised me. Then the response to the lack of response surprised me. But I thought, I don't want to live here and raise a family here. But when I got up at particularly the second cohort, and 250 people showed up, and we always start in February. So it rains, it sleets, it snows almost every night. And folks came on time. I mean, we were like 95%. Well, the white people, of course.
I was going to say, white people come on time.
I was late. I was running the thing, and I got there at 7:30. And but you all came, had your seats. And it wasn't just walking in; it was stopping and registering. It was parking, stopping and registering. And people came in. It called me back to this community. I felt a connection that the discussion was worthwhile, that there are people here who are willing to do the work. They're not necessarily the ones up just talking about it, but they're really wanting to do it. And so I think it's important for people who are trying to cross these racial lines to understand that there are people on the other side of that cultural line who really want a partnership. They really want a meaningful relationship. You just have to keep going until you find the right folks. But each time we do this and that room is full, I think I get to do this work. Now, people will often pull me to the side and say, "Oh, I'm sorry that you have to do this and put up with white people and explain this over and over and over again." It beats the hell out of having people touch my hair all day or ask me, do I get sunburn, or why I say ax and not ask. I'd much rather have people coming and learning history and then stumbling clumsily through what it means to be an ally. That's really, really refreshing to me, because that gives me hope that the rhetoric I see up front sometimes is not all of who Madison is. And so I think that's really, really important. So how's the class and the interaction change dialogue around the eatery with staff? I mean, you said 10 staff members. That's ridiculous. And so, so a few nights a week you're closed. So are you closed Monday?
Mondays.
Monday and Tuesday. So it works well for you because our classes are always on Mondays. Tell me about some interesting conversations that you may have had with staff about what you're learning, and because that might even lend itself to how you're beginning to measure this. And I'm not trying to suggest that you measure effectiveness overnight, but I guess I'm wondering, what kinds of conversations have you had with staff, and what are some of the mile markers in your head of knowing we're making some progress around here?
I think we've definitely had good conversation about using this information to make sure Short Stack's a welcoming place, and making sure we're welcoming to members of the Black community, and giving us understanding of what that we all come off of our UW-Madison bubble. A lot of students at Short Stack.
Sure.
And appreciating the racism that is a part of Madison and giving us a better, broader idea to give us good, I don't know, patience for and not being impatient with members of the community.
And that's a part of what it means to be welcoming as well. Not that people just arrive, but they are arriving. And that's really good about your space too, because people don't walk in and say, hey, I'm woke, I know everything. It's, oh, this is a thing, this is important, oh, we do this here, this is, it's okay to struggle with privilege, and I can grow and not be demonized. And in the same space, Black people can come. Like my sister told me, you all made space or something during Black Woman Heals. She said she shut your, now this is, no, she didn't shut this down, but she said she had a booth of sisters, and you all made up some, you like allowed a mixologist come in and had all these names like Girl, something, what was the one called?
Girl Sweet Tea.
Girl Sweet Tea, an Angry Black Woman.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a flammable drink? Didn't you all set that on fire?
Yeah.
And then had this Black woman with an afro with a pick in her hair as the shape of the menu. She said, Alex, I was in my town, not Atlanta, not Philly, not Chicago. I was in my town with a bunch of Black women, and we were laughing and being ourselves. And she said, we sat for hours. She says, do you know how that refreshing that was? She said even one of your staff members, who's a Black woman, walked over and said, it is so refreshing to see Black women sitting here laughing and talking. And so giving that space are the things that an eatery can do. Being conscientious of that makes people feel like this is our community. Like I can have friends in town, sorority sisters, relatives, and we can go someplace and sit down and feel like we can laugh and talk and have good food and know the owners and really feel like there's space in our town to be who we are. That's really meaningful. She talked about that on and on and on.
We loved having her.
We'll do it every year.
Okay, good. I know she loves that, and it's not just even issues with race. There's something you're doing with Lisa Payton Carey, an associate of mine. You're doing some things with Black women wellness, and just so many other issues that you're doing. I think it's really key. Well, as you look around, you all are young professionals, and so things that are happening with the current administration, immigration issues. We'll just even back up just to the race issues. I'm old enough to remember when things didn't always feel this way. That's like the tension you're experiencing in the prime of your life is stuff I read about in textbooks, that I never felt unsafe or that someone was going to call the police on me. I grew up in Madison, going to farmers market, estate sales, fishing on all the lakes, all the streams, and never felt like as a Black person I couldn't be there. You're now living in a world where white people are calling the police on Black girls for selling water, and we know what that means. That's like bringing out a vicious dog to someone who's deathly afraid of dogs. When you say I'm going to call the police, you know what that's signaling to Black people. Yet every day that I'm seeing in the news, someone's calling the police on Black folks for canvassing for a campaign or for selling water or for mowing lawns. How do you process this? Some days I think we're going backwards. Do you think we're going backwards? Do you think this is just the way America's been? Like, how do you navigate the waters of what's happening in our country in terms of racial disparity and tension? Is this going to be the norm for generations after you? How are you viewing this?
I am the wrong person to answer that question. I'll give you a very pessimistic answer. Yes, we're going backwards. Yes, we've always been here. Yes, this is going to be the way the future is going to look for a long time. I think that we have so much work to do that until we meaning white people, deal with what it means to call the police on a Black person, it means that my comfort matters more than your life.
Dang.
My comfort, just me being comfortable matters more than your life. Because we see what happens when people call the police on Black people.
We see what happens. We know what we're saying.
We know what happens. So until we deal with that huge disparity of my comfort matters more than your life, that just, in my mind,
yeah,
we got a ways to go. And so, that's at Short Stack and Sinead, that's what we'll just keep doing. We'll just keep building an army.
Hearing you say that, Alex, makes me think about the lectures that we both sat in.
Yeah.
That what happened with lynching, what happened with enslavement was really about one group's comfort and another group's life. And so when we talk about things like, well, do Black lives really matter? People don't understand this is the question we're really calling. It's a statement we're trying to make. And particularly when you use the phrase your comfort versus their safety, That's always been the rub.
Totally.
Did he not cross the sidewalk? Did that boy just look me in my eye? Did he not just say sir behind yes? Well, that was embarrassing. That was insulting. So let me threaten his life. To me, it's frightening that aspect of history is still so
And how much
prevalent.
power we still hold with the dialing of a phone.
With the dialing of a phone. Right. I mean, in my day, if a kid was doing something, you go talk to the parent. If
Yeah,
I'm
oh, yeah.
sitting, if I'm
Oh,
sitting
yeah.
in your restaurant and a kid is running,
You
I'll
call
go
their
say,
mother.
You go call their
Yeah.
mother. I wouldn't go straight to the police, and so. Sinead, do you see things similarly? I mean, Alex says this is sort of pessimistic, and I appreciate her honesty. How do you see the world?
Come on, give us some light here.
My piece of pessimism stems from, I think, the part of the history class where it brings to light Madison. You aren't able to be like, oh, over there in the
Right.
south, or just, oh, yes, the north, but we're a small piece of the north. No, Dane County. And I think specifically what Lisa's working with Black Women Wellness and the huge disparity of infant mortalities
Yes.
rates in the Black community in Dane County, that made me mad. But with that, then we can use that anger and we can use that to say, this is not okay. We can no longer, this is our community. These are the people that come and dine at Short Stack. These are the people who ride the bus with me. This is not okay. So I do think, and I know Alex well enough, I know the pessimism will then lead us to like, we give something.
Sure.
We that's where Short Stack came from. It was a challenge that we saw and we're like, we're going to do this.
Sure.
And this is what's going to have to happen now.
No,
and
that's
it's
good.
just, and it's embarrassing. We don't want to be in a, I don't want to live somewhere where it's just like, oh yeah, the worst county to live in the world was a quote I read in the Isthmus. They were talking about the woman who's running, one of the women running for office coming up here soon. Stubbs. Yeah, shit. That was her
she
quote,
was
and it's
tough.
like
She was just in my show recently.
I was like, I'm not okay. That's not
right.
That's
I
not
can't
cool.
be happy where I live and know that. So
And I think until communities realize that white professionals like yourselves may choose to not live or work or own businesses in Madison for that very reason, it won't become a serious issue. I mean, crack cocaine was not an issue for broader society until, the opioid crisis, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, we have to do things. We have this crystal meth issue. We got to do something. But when it doesn't touch your backyard, people think it's just a ghetto issue, a black issue, a poverty issue. But then when it starts hitting the broader community, we get concerned. Until Madison realizes that this is going to cost us or any community, because they are conscientious white citizens who don't want to raise their children or their families or do business around a place where not only is this the reality, because when it becomes statistically the reality, it becomes the expectation. So what's happening in Madison is, even though my daughter is not at risk because of grades or poverty, she was because of her skin color, because there was an assumption she was at risk because she was a black girl. We're at that tipping point that if a community like Madison and others around this country, if they don't understand that if we don't pull this back real fast, you have people just assuming that just because someone looks a particular way, they're at risk, and that becomes dangerous for all of us, because we're not going to thrive in that kind of environment. It's just not going to happen.
We were just talking about this the other day, asking us why we choose the organizations we choose, and why we choose the causes we choose or what we fight for. And
That's a great question.
And the way I look at it, and we have an internal organization at Short Stack called the Sustainability Team, and we look at issues that are important and we decide kind of what falls under our umbrellas and why. And race equity is kind of our big umbrella over all the
Sure.
work that we do. And people are like, well, why is that? You're white. What's going on?
Why does that matter to you?
Yeah. And I the way I answered, it's like, we support the community that supports us. If our community had an AIDS epidemic or an influenza epidemic or measles broke out, we would be marching in the streets for immunizations.
Yes, we would.
We'd be, so this is the biggest need. It's a crisis. We are in
public health
crisis
crisis.
mode
Right.
in Madison.
Some of us are.
We all should be.
I got you. Yes.
And everybody needs to get on board. We're in a crisis. We're in a race inequity crisis.
Right.
And so the lack of sense of urgency from the white community is as Sinead said, it's embarrassing. And so we just got to get more people on board.
Definitely. And part of talking with both of you today is to give hope to our would-be white allies, because what we're finding is when we post a show, when we have white guests to talk about these issues, people really tune in and learn, because people do want to ask questions, but they don't want to appear to be unlearned or ignorant. They want to make statements, but don't want to be racist. And so
we'll do that for you. We'll look unlearned and ignorant and racist for you.
So what you're saying, taking these first steps is really, really important, because people don't realize that they can make a difference the way you have. And what I really appreciate about you and your team is that you didn't say, tell us what to do. You thought, what's our sphere of influence? What's in our hand? What can we do? Because after we finished, 250 people sat there after the course, and many didn't want to leave because they wanted someone to tell them what to do. And so you all just went and just tied it right into your business, and it wasn't for your profit margin, which it should be impacted. I get tired of waiting in line, so I know you're doing something right, but you did it because it's the right thing. And so you're modeling that you can be socially conscious and not go into the red just because you're trying to be a good neighbor in the community. And I want folks who are listening to be able to ask restaurants. So let me just turn the scenario. Let me just say this. If someone is listening, but they're in the community and there's a diner or someplace they go to eat, what could a customer or patron say to an owner of a small business like yours that might make them think about making their environment more welcoming? So what would you say to someone who's listening? So, I go to the same place every Thursday and I never see any black workers or any black people eating there. What could they say that wouldn't be inflammatory, but it might help a small business to think differently? I know that's kind of a crazy question, but I'd love to hear because there are people wondering what they can do.
Yeah. I got some.
Sure.
I think that you start with yourself. If you're saying, hey, I go into this diner every Thursday and I notice there's no black people here, you could say, I would really love to see more black people here. I personally would love to see more black people. I know a lot of black people would love to come to this diner. And maybe even just have a conversation with the owners. Can you think of any reasons why maybe black people don't come to your diner?
Okay.
And get a feel for maybe how cognizant they are. Maybe they say, oh, I guess I never even thought about it. Or maybe you're digging a little deeper into why there aren't. I think you really need to ask business owners and put it on them to start thinking about that. Because you can't tell businesses what to do. But the second I say, hey, I walked into your restaurant and I don't see any black people here. I really think black people would like to be here. Do you know why people wouldn't feel comfortable being here? Do you have any idea why that might be?
Sure.
And if they don't, then maybe you present some answers of like, hey, I noticed a lot of my black friends like A, B, C, D, E, F, G food, and you don't have any of that on your menu. Would you ever consider putting that on your menu?
That's a great question.
It's
And
a
they
good-
could
it's a
they could
good
bring some
question.
black friends in with
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
I mean,
There you go.
they could bring some black people in with them. But that's really a great question. And so, but again, not only are you welcoming, but you're giving back to the community. So how do you get that on a small business owner's radar? Because someone can put, fried catfish on their breakfast menu, but still not care about the community or give something back to the community. You've made both leaps. And so what would you say to folks who are small business owners, because there are small business owners who are listening in? What could they begin to do, or conversations can they begin to have to think about how they can be more community conscious or philanthropic towards marginalized communities in their neighborhoods?
I think we always say you always want to give. We want to give back to who supports us. So you're sitting there and you're like, how have I made it to where I am today? It's your community. So rather than just maybe giving just to the Humane Society because that's easy and cute,
Sure.
taking, you have the power. It's your business. So you take the time to just be like, what's our demographic? Who comes in here? Where can I give back and support the people that support me?
Or where's the biggest need? Where's the biggest need?
Right. It's in the papers. It's all around you.
Where's the biggest need? Or who gets the least amount of visibility that deserves it? That's
Sure.
what I always say to Lolita. I'm like, Lolita, your sister, you're doing the work that nobody cares to recognize.
Right.
Such important work where the visibility is just not there. And we all know why.
Right.
We all know that apathy of why that exists. But if Short Stack can create the visibility,
Sure.
Why wouldn't we?
That makes great sense because she does work with helping Black women.
Oh, it's incredible.
So when we talk about the Black community, which is, the households of which, 70% of which are led by women. And if we're not building our women up and helping them to become healthy, then that just means our communities are really, really hurting with very little chance of recovery. So you're right. Let's look at who doesn't get recognition. So, you're giving great advice. Take a look in your community. You don't need a consultant to come in from corporate to tell you this. Who's failing in your schools? Who's being shot in the streets? Who's not having rights? Who's filling up your jails? Whose babies are dying? Yeah. More, than some third world
people
countries.
are numbers people. Yeah, look at some disparities. If you're a numbers guy and you need like some data to show you,
go look at that.
There's plenty of it.
And visibility's free.
Yeah,
visibility's free. We can feel for the fact that there are days where we're like, sometimes we gotta focus for a hot minute on selling breakfast to then give back. Like there is that reality.
Sure.
And so I can appreciate, and especially if you're newer or there are struggles. Restaurants are some of the hardest businesses to keep afloat.
Yes, they are.
Visibility is free.
Yes,
that is you saying, yep, I'm gonna be uncomfortable, and people are like, oh, I don't want politics with breakfast, or I don't want. It's like, no, that's where.
I was wondering how some of the customers we don't want politics.
We get some great hate mail last week. That was good.
So people will go and eat and they get some hate mail. Really, like what were they, what are they mad about?
All kinds of stuff.
Not the food.
Not the food.
Why can't I just sit down at a damn table and eat some breakfast without all these damn politics and I could use without all the signs in the window and
it's like
we don't,
hate
mail about Tammy Baldwin.
Oh yeah,
sure.
some hate mail about politicians. That was a good one.
Wow, you have carry out too. So if he doesn't want to sit in there and look at all that stuff, he can just order it to go.
Or go to Denny's.
This was a posted.
Oh no, you didn't. He can go to Denny's.
That's usually my answer.
That's right. Go to Denny's. Wow.
Someone's taken the time to handwrite a postcard, put a stamp on it, address it to Short Stack. It's like, don't you have better things to
emails?
do?
Yeah.
And here's the thing about it. He wrote that, but it wasn't just to vent. He wanted to make a statement and really expected you to make some kind of change. That's my thought. Like if you take time to do that, maybe they don't know. Maybe they've been hoodwinked. Maybe they've been co-opted. So I'm going to just help enlighten these young business leaders. Hey, you do great food. Just take all the stuff out the window and just put NFL pictures up like everybody else. Man, Sinead, one of the things I think is cool is you and Alex have made room for staff to come, and other companies have done it as well. But am I remembering this correctly? Did your parents tell me? Did your mom tell me that you paid their tuition to come to the history class for a Christmas gift?
Yep.
You gave your parents Black history for Christmas.
Yes.
That's the gift that keeps on giving. I'm dreaming of a Black Christmas. And so, and they came.
They came,
So that must have been, so were you facilitating when they're in the class, or was that when you were taking it also?
No, so it was our second. Yep, we were facilitating. And they came with our staff members.
I just thought that was a cool story because I think what happens for a lot of people, particularly your parents and I are from the same generation, we don't want to look back and feel like we just slept on this issue. We want to feel like we said something, we did something, and we didn't just say, this is okay. I get Making America Great, but not again, because I can't think of a point in history where it was really that. Yeah, when was that? What year was that? What decade was that? But I just thought that was very meaningful, so that as you're experiencing this information, to also bring your parents into it, so that it's something that you discuss together, something that they can talk about with their peers, I think is really, really important. I think another thing that's very intriguing, and you two must have noticed this, the majority of the people are probably like 45 and older. So it's an older crowd that considers itself educated, but realize that we have been miseducated along these lines. And so did your parents enjoy it? Did they feel like they learned?
Yeah,
things?
they did. I think it was really great. The length of the class,
9 weeks.
Yeah, is really important. Just watching my dad specifically, but he just the first few classes he wanted to hang out after. He needed to debrief. He was just stunned by how he felt robbed. Like he just of the given the wrong history. He like needed those first few weeks to just be like to get behind. Like this information was withheld from me and it was not given to me.
Sinead, that's what I keep hearing. I noticed like around the third lecture, it's sort of like deer in the headlights. Like at the first lecture, the white people are there. Yeah. They're in the front row. They got their clipboards. They're here. We're all gonna wake up together. We're gonna be woke. They got their pens out. And then by the third week, they're looking like, damn. this all happened on American soil and nobody told me. Like, I'm going to Google it. This stuff really happened. And so I feel like when that happens, it is usually around week 3 or 4.
Yep.
People dig in a little deeper and they begin to realize, wait, black people, people of color, marginalized people have been trying to tell us that we've been duped. And so this isn't just an affront to black people. This is an affront to all of us. And why was this history kept separate? And what are we trying to perpetuate? And what's really going on? I think that's the hook. People think we try to use guilt or something. That's the hook, I think. So what you said your dad mentioned and the need to debrief, which is why we have the small groups, you're giving great language to what we hope happens to people and what we think is happening to people that we've been duped, we've been lied to.
Yeah. And all the professors were obviously amazing. Christy Clark Pajara. My dad loved it all, but I thought, give Leleda a shout out. He said his favorite class or session of the whole thing was when Leleda came and spoke about Black Woman Heal and gave that.
I'll be sure to really convey that to her. You guys, there's so many other questions I have. Let me just ask one more. Oh man, you touched upon it a little bit with the customers, but let me just ask: when you're hiring new staff, or when you're training new staff, is this? I know the history class is part of the training because you brought people, but in the interview process, do you explain to people, hey, if you're going to work here, we want you to know this is going to be welcoming. We're helping to build an army. I mean, you're paying the army you're building in many ways, and then you're feeding the army. I mean, there's 2 ways you mobilize people: you feed them and you pay them. So I just need to. So I guess let me make the statement. It's going to be a question. I guess I'll make it a statement. I want you to know I appreciate that, because that's putting your money and your action and your energy where your mouths have been, to say, I'm going to not just talk about this, but do it. And I'm just telling you, if just a few more businesses, nonprofits, entities, faith communities begin to put resources and orientation behind what we say is our collective value, we could really change things in our community. And my expectation is that Madison can become an example for the rest of the country, but it starts with would-be allies using their space, their spheres of influence, their livelihood. I think that's really, really important. I will ask this question. I'll let this be my last one, because the Stress Tech line is starting to build up. But on the last day of one of the most recent trainings we were in, I think it's when we had the White Allies panel, and someone brought up the question about I think you asked, Alex, what does sacrifice look like?
Oh, risk.
What does risk look like?
I love the word risk.
And so let me just ask each of you as we're closing out, because I think we sort of skated the issue. I tried to bring it in. I
appreciated that.
But what would you say to people who are listening, who think that because they retweet something or repost something that they're really an ally? What's the risk? What's the sacrifice? What's the cost of a true white ally of their black friends and colleagues in a community like ours? And I'll ask you first, Alex, and then Sinead, you can have the last one.
I think the risk in modern times in 2018 in Madison, Wisconsin, if you were to ask me what would I be willing to risk, I would say all of it, right?
And you are.
Our business, yeah. I think that we have to risk making people feel comfortable versus uncomfortable, and I think that we have to risk friendships that we had and family members that we held dear, and I think we have to be willing to risk all of it. I think that's the answer.
Wow.
I do. I think that, sure. And it sounds extreme, sure, but that's what I feel.
And back in the times when the historical times that we studied, the true white allies were often lynched or beaten along with their black counterparts. Like, okay, you gonna love them, then we're gonna treat you like them. There was a huge risk. It wasn't just like, hey, I got you, buddy, high five.
I retweeted what you wrote today.
Right.
Yeah.
I cried while they whipped you and sold your baby and raped your mom.
Yeah.
I wept. I said a prayer for you. That's not allyship.
Agreed.
Shanae?
Yeah, for sure, comfortability was what I was gonna go to first, easily. Like, you gotta feel okay being uncomfortable. And I think it's interesting. Customer service industry is you have to change your mentality of like your instinct is like, give people what they want. You need to give, and it's like, no, we have a say in this, and we want to make sure that our mission and our goal of making everyone feel welcome is priority over, and what we risk is business of people who we don't want in our restaurant.
You know what? I think we can take the would-be off. I think you two are allies. And I say that with all sincerity. I'll just mention that during the attempt to integrate lunch counters, particularly in North Carolina, it was first white women who left their college campuses. I think I mentioned this in the history class, to sit with black patrons. While hot coffee was thrown on them, they risked things. They risked being expelled because that was a threat to their parents. It was a big thing for women to be able to go to college, and then you're going to risk it all to go sit with these black people. And when America saw white women being scalded and treated the same way, white men started sitting with the white women and the black patrons. And in a matter of months, laws began to change, counters began to get integrated, but it's because people took a step. But what I have to really reiterate, because you two are our guests today, that in that movement, it was white women who stepped out of their comfort zone, who risked it, who left campus to sit with black people they didn't really know. And it's a reminder that they both risked their lives and reputations. But it was probably the first time that in America, we saw white people putting it all on the line with black people putting it all on the line. And so you just follow a strong legacy of people who are doing that. And you have to tell that history as well. Part of the history that you have to help remind people of is that it was whites, particularly white women, who led the way in really sitting with black folks in restaurants, ironically, in order to diversify them. And so you're working and owning an integrated place that white women, along with black folks, helped to have happen. So I really respect you both so much for your minds, for your business acumen, for your commitment. I'm humbled when you say putting it on the line, because I think if more black people knew that white people felt that way, we would rethink Madison and we would reshape Madison. So we have a lot of work to do together. I appreciate what you're saying about what you need to do with whites, but we need to continue to do more work together. And I'm really, really trusting that people who are listening are becoming motivated. As you're listening to this podcast, just look down in the notes and you can click to go to Stack Eatery to find out what these women are doing. You can find out about their foundation, some of the bold steps that they've taken. If you have some questions or thoughts, you can tweet out at me, as always, at Alex G. Jr. But I've really, really enjoyed this episode and being able to talk to some real respected white allies about what it means and what it costs and what we have to continue to do to make this happen. So thank you all so much for being my guest on Black Like Me. This has been amazing, and I appreciate you, and much success to your work and to your endeavors in making Madison a better and more inclusive place.
You as well.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at www.alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.